Hello, my name's Tiffany, and I will be teaching your CSS seminar today. So I'm going to tell you a bit about myself. I am a web designer. I have been in the field for about 8 years now. Currently, I work within the education sector as a design expert, and my day-to-day tasks include working with Photoshop, Illustrator, HTML, and CSS, just to apply design elements. In the past, I've worked for a few digital media companies and non-profit companies. I've also developed websites for independent clients. Please check out my website, www.tazdesigns.ca, and you can check out the companies I work for, my skills, and you can even contact me if you like. Currently, I tutor HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and PHP at a local college here in Ontario, Canada. I'm currently a university student, and I'm working towards my sociology degree, and once I complete that, I want to go on to Teachers College and get a diploma in teaching, and I plan on teaching skills within technology to students within grades 6 to 8. I would like to prepare these students for high school and teach them skills that they will be using once they do go to high school and choose their technology electives. My future plans are to continue on with seminars like this one today, and I also have a plan to open up an organization that will teach kids how to use computers and computer technology and programming and all that, and this will be aimed towards kids within grade 6 to 8, so once they do reach high school, they'll have the skills and knowledge to take those technology classes and know what they're doing and have a good time doing it. I also hope to open an organization, and this organization will be aimed towards these middle school students, grade 6 to 8, and they could again learn the technology and computer skills, and also for high school and university students that want help or tutoring with their technology or computer courses. It's kind of like an after school program, like if you heard of Kumon after school, it's like that but technology based. So yeah, I hope to start up this organization one day, and hopefully it will be successful. So yeah, enjoy the seminar. I hope you guys can return to future seminars that I have. Also feel free to check out my blog at cssanimation.net. This blog features articles and roundups on tutorials, examples. I also have a portfolio up there that shows projects that I've done that use CSS animation and websites that use CSS animation. So yeah, feel free to check that out. We'll also be starting our new section, CSS Seminars, and we'll feature the videos on our seminar, so you can check that out as well. So we hope that you do enjoy this 2 to 3 hour seminar, and if you do have any questions, feel free to contact me at tiffany@tazdesigns.ca. So now I will start off with a short presentation on the things that we'll be doing today and the programs you'll need, and just a little introductory to HTML5 and CSS3. Stay tuned. So again, welcome to CSS Seminar by Taz Design. Today we're creating an animated website header. The programs that you'll be needing today is Notepad++ for our Windows users, and and Text Wrangler for our Mac users. The browsers that you could use is one of the following: either Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Apple Safari, or Internet Explorer 10.0. Today we'll be coding in HTML5 and CSS3. What is HTML5? HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and HTML5 is the newest version of this. It's a program used to present content on the web. Many websites are built with using HTML, and HTML5 is easy to read by both human and computer. Some cool new features of HTML5 include media playback, offline storage, and drag and drop. What is CSS3? Well, CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. CSS3 is the latest version of CSS. It is a styling programming language. It's used to style web pages, mostly written in HTML. It adds presentation and design to the website, and it displays visual effects and a more enriched user interface onto web pages. Some new techniques of CSS3 include drop shadow, gradients, border effects, animations, and transformations. Creating an HTML file. The following photo shows a basic diagram on the basic layout of an HTML file. So you have your doc type tag, and this doc type tag basically tells the web browser what version of HTML the document is written in. Then you have your HTML tag. It tells the browser that it's an HTML document. You have your head tag. It contains elements that contain information that's used within the HTML document. And in between this, you could have all sorts of tags, but the main one right now is a title tag, and it gives the page a title that can be seen on top of the top menu bar. After that, you'll need to close your tags. As you can see here, the front slash is meant to close a tag. So we have our closing heading tag, and then you'll have your opening body tag, and this body tag and in between this body tag will contain contents of the web page. Then you'll have your closing body tag and your closing HTML tag. The name and structure of an HTML file ends with .html. For example, mypage.html. HTML/HTML5 tags that we'll be using today. You'll have your header tag. This defines the header section of the page for introductory content and the main navigation link. You'll have your nav tag. It defines the navigation of the page. The image will define the images that are used on the page. The div will group elements together. The p tag defines paragraph, which includes text. The a tags defines hyperlink to link from one page to another, and you'll have your span tag, which can also group elements together. Creating a CSS file. A CSS style sheet contains the names of HTML elements and tags. The style sheet can be externally linked from an HTML file or embedded within the head of a HTML file. The style sheet renders specific style properties to apply onto web pages. HTML elements are defined with classes, IDs, and tag names. A CSS style sheet file usually follows the following naming structure: style.css. So defining HTML elements and CSS. You'll have your class name, which will define the style properties, your ID name, which will define the style properties, and the tag name, which will define the style properties. Today we'll be using the following CSS selectors. Classes is defined with a period before the class name. ID is defined with a pound sign before the class name. And your tag name, for example, the image tag or your hyperlink tag. Linking your style sheet to your HTML file. We'll use a HTML link tag. The link tag will link our style sheet to our HTML file. The link tag will define the relationship between our HTML file and the external CSS style sheet. The link tag will use three attributes. Our href defines the location of the style sheet we want to link our HTML file to. A rel defines the link tag is being used, defines what the link tag is being used for the HTML file, and the type defines the type of document that the tag is linking to. So now we'll get started, but first we'll take a 10-minute break. So you should have received a folder called CSS Seminar April 28, and within this folder you'll find two other folders, your resources folder and your seminar file folders. We'll be using the seminar file folders to insert our code into. Our resources folder will have the completed code within it, and just in case you need to look back if you skip something. You'll also want to set up your screen like this image here. On the left side, you'll have your seminar window, You should be seeing this image in that window right now. And on the right side, you'll have your text editor, where you can make the edits to whatever you see on the left side of your screen. Let's take a look at what we want to do today. Here's what we'll do. We'll have our logo roll in, our title drop in, our slogan fade in, and we'll have an animation hover applied to our navigation links. Let's get started. First, we want to open up our text editor. We'll navigate to the file on our desktop. Open up the seminar file and open up the index file. We'll also need to open up our style sheet as well. Let's head on over to our index file. As you can see, I created comments here, and in between these comments we'll be inserting the code between the header comments. So below our first header comment, you can put our header tag. Don't forget, you'll also need your closing header tag. Our header will also have two divs. So create a pair of div tags, and you'll also need the closing div tag. We'll also need our nav tags, closing nav, and then inside each of the div we'll need our image tags, which will look like this. You could always just copy the tag, right click, copy, and paste. We'll paste this image tag into our second div. If you hit enter after the image tag within the second div, you'll also need to put a p tag with its closing tag. You could put the closing tags on the next line. Within our navigation, we'll have 8 links: home, about, profile, portfolio, photos, videos, blog, and contact. Let's put our images in. So our first image tag will have our logo. As you can see in the seminar files folder, you have your logo 1. We also have the header, which is named title 1. So we'll reference this inside our image tags. Can save that. Now, after our open p tag, we could put our slogan. Our slogan today will be animated with HTML and CSS3. HTML5 and CSS3. Also, each one of our links will need a div tag. So go ahead and put your div tags around each one of the links. Don't forget your closing div tag. Nope, you don't need the capital there. Now, let's add some IDs to our divs. Our first div will have an ID of left. Our second ID will have an ID of right. So your code should look like this as I highlight the header area. Your header, your two divs with the images. Oh, looks like we got extra image in there. Let's delete that. Your P with your slogan, your nav, and closing header. I'll give you a second just to catch up there. As we go to our style sheet, we'll style a few of these elements. As you can see, I made a few comments here where it says HTML parts to style in header. You could put our left div and our right div. Let's also put our slogan and our nav in there as well. Oh, I think we just named our nav. Let's just put our nav in there for now. So our left div is going to be floated left. And our right div is going to be floated right. Here's what it will look like. Our width is going to be 20% of the page. And our width for our right div will be 80% of the page. Our nav will have the following style applied to it. If you hit Control S or Command S on the Mac, this will save your file. Let's go back to our HTML file. Now we want to apply a class to our slogan. We'll do it like this. We can also apply an ID to our nav. Each one of our nav will have the same ID. Now, if you just copy your ID there, right click, copy, and then paste it within the first div tag of every navigation link, you can apply the ID name to it. Let's go back to our style sheet. Remember, Control S or Command S to save. Now, we'll want to apply the styles for our slogan and navigation buttons. Our slogan will have the following styles applied to it. It will just change the font size. Our button will have a few styles applied to it, so pay close attention. For the color, we put a hex code. A hex code is basically a code that is for a color. So this color here will be like a reddish burgundy type of color. Load it left. Today we're using Google fonts. So the Google font we are using is called Life Favors Cursive. Font size will be 16. Our font weight, we'll bold it. Our letter spacing will be about 2 pixels. Our margin right will be 20 pixels. Our margin top 55 pixels. Our padding our width here. So let's open this up and see how it looks for now. So here is our basic header that we will be animated. We'll roll in the logo, drop in the header, fade in this logo, and apply cool animation hover effect to the nav. Let's start off with our navigation. So we'll go back to our HTML file, and then each one of our navigation will have basically a different class applied to every other one. It will look like this. So every other one will have slightly a different animation applied to it. Let's go on to our CSS file. Remember, Control S or Command S to save. So what we're going to do now is apply a hover animation to each one of the turn left and turn right classes. So as you can see, I made comments here as to where to put each section. We're going to put our hover animation to our navigation underneath the navigation comment where it says Start Section to apply keyframe elements. Let's start with our turn left class. We'll also create an empty selector for our turn right class. So what we're going to do here for our animation is apply a transition which will basically rotate and scale each navigation link to create the animation. Our transform property will look like this. Now we'll also need to apply our browser prefixes so that each browser can basically read the style that is created within the selector. Each browser has its own prefix. If you just copy the transform here, paste it in, but the prefix for IE10 will be -ms-. Don't forget your semicolons. Paste it in. The prefix for Chrome will be -webkit-. The prefix for Firefox will be -moz-. And the prefix for Safari will be -o-. Every browser has its specific prefix. So if you know you're using Chrome or Firefox or Safari, put your prefix in order to render the animation. Now we'll put our transform in. Our transform will also need the prefixes applied to it. It will look like this. Sorry, our transition, not our transform. So our transition will look like this. Basically, our transition reads to transition all of the styles in 0.5 of a second with an even pace. An even pace basically gives it a slow start and fast end animation. Again, with our prefixes, I'll just copy this. Paste it in. Now for our right hover, it will basically have the same style. So what I'm going to do is copy all that and paste it into our turn right hover selector. The only thing I'll be changing here is the minus 10 degrees. So let's just run that and show you what it has done. So when you hover over, each nav will turn left or turn right. I'm going to add an effect on the cursor, so just so you know when you're hovering over it. So it will give it the pointing finger once you hover over the nav. Now, let's animate our logo. If we go back to our HTML, we'll need to apply in the class to our logo. Let's give it the class name, logo. Control S to save. And then if you go to the comments part where it says start section to apply keyframe elements, beneath the logo, just create our logo selector. Now let's create the keyframe for this. You'll notice in the comments it says start keyframe animation. So below the logo animation keyframe, we will create a keyframe animation that will animate the logo. This animation will be called rolling. To start our keyframe, we'll put the @ sign, keyframes, rolling. So a rolling keyframe will basically roll in the logo from the right of the screen. It will have 5 states to it, and this will rotate it 360 degrees each time. Our first keyframe will be meant for the IE browsers, but then we'll put the prefixes in for the rest of you guys. So each state will have a different style of property applied to it. What we're doing here is that it will transform and rotate the logo 360 degrees each time it changes the state. It will also move into the screen from the left at a different position. Oh, forgot the E there. You'll have to add 320 at each 320 degrees from the previous degree at every state. Now what we could do to target the other browsers is copy this keyframe and just change the prefixes for the other browsers. So for Firefox, we'll need the @-mov- keyframes rolling. We'll also need to change our prefixes for our transform property. There's no MS needed for the Firefox keyframe. Now we'll create our WebKit one. Our WebKit one will need the WebKit prefix. So instead of MOV, we'll replace it with WebKit. Our transform property will also need the WebKit prefix. -WebKit-. Remember to apply this to every state. And we'll also need to do for Safari. Just copy the previous one and then paste. We'll need to change our keyframe prefix to O, but the transform property could be the same because Safari will read the WebKit transform property. Also, don't forget your semicolons. Looks like I forgot mine. Save that. And now we'll need to apply the animation onto our logo. First, we'll target our IE users. So what we're doing here is we're calling our roll-in animation. It will run for 4 seconds in a linear speed, so same speed throughout, start to end. A 0-second pause, so it will load once the page loads, and it will only play once. Again, I'll just copy this first line so it targets the rest of the browsers. We'll also need to set an initial state to our logo to give it an end position. Let's play it and see if it works. There we have it. Our logo rolls in. Don't forget our animation, our hover animation. There you go. Let's play it one more time. There we have it. Our logo rolls in. Let's work with our header now. Our header will also need a class. We'll call this title. Let's go over to our CSS file, and then underneath our title comment, we'll need to put our title selector. Let's go down to our keyframe comments, and where it says title animation keyframe, underneath that we'll create a keyframe for our title. our keyframe, our title animation will have 9 states applied to it. Let me just double check. Yep, 9 states applied to it. And basically, this will fade in and drop in the logo from the top. Let's start it. So our logo will start off invisible, and then when it reaches 65% of whichever timing we set for the logo, it will be at the full opacity. Once it drops in, we want to create a little bounce when it drops in. So here's what we'll do. And the last state here. So our position will go from 5 to 0, 5 to 0, 5 to 0, 5 to 0. This will create a bouncing animation once the title fades in from the top. So again, we'll need to target all our browsers here and create a prefix for each of the keyframes. We'll just copy that, paste it in, target Firefox, paste it in, target Chrome, paste it in, and target Safari. Now let's apply the keyframe to our title selector. We'll go back up to our title selector and call the animation fade in title. Let's make sure we got the right spelling there. Okay. So this animation will run for 6 seconds in a linear speed with no pause and play only once. Again, for demonstration purposes, we're going to put the prefixes for all the browsers that support CSS animation. Feel free to just put the prefix that supports the browser that you mainly use. Our title will also need an initial state, so we'll set the opacity to 1. and position it right at the top there. Let's run the animation and see how it looks. And it has a little bounce there at the end. There you go. Now we're going to apply the animation to our slogan. So what we'll do is we're going to create a span around each one of the words in our slogan. I'll put each word on a separate line just to make it easier to read. So we'll put span tags around each one of our slogans. Initially, we're going to do a span tag around each one of the letters, but for timing purposes, we'll just do it for each letter, each word, sorry. We also need to give a class to each one of our spans. We'll call it word 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now if we go back to our style sheet, underneath the slogan comment, we'll create an empty selector for each one of our word classes. Now we'll create a keyframe that will fade in each word. We'll only need to create one keyframe though. So if we go down where it says slogan animation keyframe, we'll create our keyframe here. And we'll call it fade in text. This will have 3 states applied to it. So our first one, we'll set the visibility of the word to 0. Our second state, we'll set the visibility to half. In our last state, we'll have a full visibility. Again, we're going to copy and paste to create the prefixes for each browser. MOZ for Firefox. Oh, looks like I forgot our percentage sign there. And then we have WebKit for our Chrome users. And O for our Safari users. Now we will apply the keyframe to our words. call the animation fade in text. We'll let the animation run for about 3.5 seconds. So 1000 milliseconds is equal to 1 second. So what we're going to use is milliseconds here, and then we'll ease in and out. So basically this will create the same slow speed animation from start to end. We'll start the animation right away so there's no pause, and we'll play it only once. Again, we'll need the browser prefixes for our animation property so it can render within the right browser. We also need to set the initial opacity of each one of the letters. So what we're going to do is copy our styles here and paste it into each one of our word selectors, but we'll have to make a little change. So we'll have to change the timing of each word so it takes longer for the following word to fade in. So our next word, we'll probably want it to be about maybe 4 seconds long. Yeah, that sounds good. So we'll put it to 4000 milliseconds. Copy that. We'll make the next one 4500, so it's 4.5 seconds. We'll make the next one here 5000 milliseconds, which equals 5 seconds. And the last one will be 5500 seconds. We'll save that, and let's see how it looks. Pretty cool. So each letter will take its time to fade in. Let's see. How about we apply a hover to our logo? We want this logo to rotate every time we hover over it. Let's go back to our HTML file. As we can see, we applied a class of logo to our logo. If we go to our style sheet and go to our logo section, there we go, we'll need to apply a logo hover selector. So our logo hover is going to have a transition to it. Just like when we applied the transition to our navigation, we're going to apply the transition property to our logo hover. This transition will use a transform. It will look like this. And because we created the transform for IE, we'll also need to put the prefixes in again for the appropriate browser. Paste it in there. We'll do it for Firefox. We'll do it for Chrome and Safari. Now our transition, we'll call this transform. We'll start off with our IE prefix. Which will call our transform. It looks like we got an extra character in there. And this animation is going to run for 2 seconds. We'll copy that, paste it in, and apply the appropriate prefixes. That should do it. Let's take a look at that, our hover transition. So once we hover over our logo, it spins around. Pretty cool, huh? Let's see. I think we should apply a bouncing effect onto our header. For example here, let's go to my coming soon website that I previously had up. As you see the tab designs, that little bounce there, how about we apply it to our header? So what we'll need to do, let's go back to our HTML. We'll need to apply a span tag around the image. We'll call this title box. Control S to save. Let's go to our CSS. Our title selection. We'll create the title box selector. And we'll also need to create a keyframe for it. I believe I have a comment in there for this section. So where it says title animation keyframe 2 after the fading in animation, we're going to create our keyframe for this. We'll call this keyframes floating animation. So what this is going to do basically is bounce the header up and down, like the example I showed you. Again, we'll need to create a keyframe for each one of the browsers there and apply the appropriate prefixes. Our Chrome users and our Safari users. Save that. And now we'll need to apply this keyframe onto our selector. Let's go back to our title box selector. Put our animation property, call our animation. We'll have it run for 1 second for even and out. And we'll let it run for 6.1 seconds. Why we do this is because we have our title drop in and bounce in for 6 seconds. So we want it to keep bouncing after 6 seconds. So we put the pause there to 61 milliseconds. And we'll have it infinite so it keeps bouncing. Again, we're going to apply the appropriate prefixes so it could render within the appropriate browser. So for our Firefox users, we got for our Chrome users, And we got for our Safari users there. We'll also need to apply an initial state to it, so when it's done rendering, it will know where to place the image. Save that. And let's run it again. There we have it. Our header bounces, our logo turns on hover, we got our navigation turning on hover. Let's run it one more time. Here, our logo rolls in, title drops in, slogan fades in, and there we have it, our animated header. So feel free to send me an email at tiffany@tazdesigns.ca if you would like a copy of this seminar. This was just a little quick version of the seminar, but we had to re-record it because we had issues when the live seminar did happen. But if you do want these files, feel free to email me again, tiffany@tazdesigns.ca, and I'll send you the files. I'm hoping that you did enjoy this video and do come back to our next live seminars. And thank you for your time.